So it's now 16 years since the Climate Change Act was sent from the Scottish Parliament. That set the original 80% target for net zero. It is 6 years since that effectively got amended to become net zero 5 years earlier. We have a Scotland Food and Drink strategy that was launched 18 months ago, of which we're an integral part, hugely proud, hugely keen in terms of the optimism and the potential off the back of it. But the reality is we're 18 months into a 5-year strategic plan to grow the industry by £4 billion. That clock is ticking. We're over 2 years since the biodiversity strategy got launched, and only 5 years away from the first target where we want to halt nature loss. So there's lots and lots and lots of clocks ticking. We have the words, we have the pretty pictures, we have the charts, we have the diagrams, we have the roadmaps. Now it's time for action. Now the reality is, and apologies to those of you here who use this analogy a lot around the runway, when you're going for a destination, you want to land at that destination efficiently, safely, you want a decent runway, you want a good way to get to your destination safely and effectively. We don't get a move on, that's the runway we're going to work on. And that's going to require more skill, more investment, and be a lot more hazardous. The way I kind of see it is from a dilemma. We've got lots to go at, lots of responsibilities, lots of targets. We're going to need a hell of a bang. But the dilemma is, there's not a lot of buck. The purse, the public purse, is fairly constrained, I would say, is the way to put it. And that's the reality that we've got to face. The way I see it is there's probably 3 options here. Some are kind of more realistic than others. Option 1, we look for divine intervention. We get some magic. Any passing resemblance to George, the director of the Agriculture and Rural Economy Director, is purely coincidental. Not very likely. I suppose potentially feasible, but anyway, not an option. Option 2, I would say actually in the world of politics, this is more likely. Actually, in terms of keeping our fingers crossed and hoping it all lands okay. But again, not a feasible option. So the way I kind of see it is option 3, and hold on to your seats, but it's time to utter the C word. C word's the word everyone knows, and no one really utters. That's cooperation. It's quite fitting that here we are in 2025, the United Nations has actually decreed that it's the International Year of Cooperatives. And within that, they've kind of recognised the pivotal role of cooperatives in terms of sustainable development. And what you got up there is I'm very sort of proud of the fact that there's, covers off most of, our members. I looked at our newest members, our Yorkshire members who aren't on there. But, the reality is, as far as I see it, that's really the only option. Now, I hear the cynics amongst you saying, well, of course Tim Bailey would say that cooperation, co-ops are the only show in town. Tim Bailey's paid by SAOS to do that, to say just that. The reality is, Tim Bailey is employed by SAOS to do that. And SAOS is a co-op, And SAOS, the co-op, is owned by all those co-ops. There are 60 co-ops across Scotland who deliver £1 billion worth of output every year. That's the reality. Tim Bailey's employed by SAOS, the co-op, it's owned by 60 co-ops who are across different sectors, produce over half our pig meat, half our dairy meat, 35-40% of our malt and barley, 15% of our soft fruit, 25-30% of our broccoli, 7-8% of our vine and peas, 10% plus of our beef and lamb, and across the machinery rooms, across many of you represented here, have 7,000 members. That's saving millions and millions and millions of pounds for their members every what I call the engine room in place already. That is big bang, but not a lot of bucks so far. So, to characterise it, I would say that across all the co-ops here, across other co-ops that are not represented here, and other potential opportunities for cooperation, they can do the heavy lifting here. And that's the only way that we can get that success. So if we want more heavy lifting for existing co-ops and new cooperative ventures, how are we going to do that? Now the reality is, I think, despite the reluctance necessarily after the C word at times, I think there's acceptance, we've heard today, that it's the only option, it's the only show in town to really do it. How do we do that? So it's such a good idea, why is not more of it happening? Well, I think the reality is that cooperation is not some sort of immaculate cooperative conception. There's a number of ingredients that are needed to make that a success. So the first is around the delivery resource, the facilitation for that. So the way to characterise that is you need a midwife, you need a health visitor, and you need kind of ongoing kind of education and mentoring and support to make that happen. And I'd say we're in a good place for that. That's obviously what we're here for. We've got a colleague Gareth from Co-ops UK. We've got other partners represented around this room who've got the competence, the skills, the willingness to help on that. So we're in a good place. In terms of legislative and policy support, that's coming into a good place. And all credit to George and colleagues and the Cabinet Secretary and the Minister and others who recognise that in terms of the, frankly, the lobbying. There was lobbying. I'll make no apologies for that. The lobbying that we did in terms of ensuring that the new Agriculture Act in Scotland actually provided provision for cooperatives to get support, the cooperative or the benefits of cooperatives to get recognised in the new Rural Support Plan. And that's something that's critical, because in that Rural Support Plan, when that's going to get published at the Scottish Parliament, it will have to specifically say how the benefits of co-ops are getting represented in terms of the programmes, in terms of the funding, and in terms of the prioritisations within that. And if it's not, then everyone's going to get held to account. So that's a really good foundation to work from. The thing that's not so good is obviously it's in terms of the financial incentives. And at the bottom line, you need all those three for us to have more cooperation success. So how do we make it happen? I think the good thing is we don't really have to reinvent the wheel here. We talked about earlier, Andy was talking earlier, in terms of accessing funds from the what's called the FPMC scheme. So it's Phil Sunday name with the Food Processing and Marketing Cooperation Scheme. The reality was in the past it was the Food Processing Scheme. There was opportunities for funding for marketing and there was opportunities there for cooperation. But the reality, the cooperation angle wasn't well promoted, there wasn't good uptake, there wasn't really any great success with it. But that's a good model in terms of what we can take going forward. Within the agriculture vision and the 4-tier structure going forward, then the critical tier is supply chain support within tier 3. And that's where we've got to make the most of. And in terms of having a new FPMC in place, having distinct supply chain support, then that obviously needs funding. There's a lot of point being here and saying, look at the opportunities there are for our supply chains, the opportunities there are for new markets. If there's need to actually underpin and shore up our supply chains, if we don't actually support them, and support can't just be warm words, it's got to be money. But equally, there's lots of challenges. There's lots of, is John still here? John Davison? But in terms of, around direct support, we're not saying to take a lot of money away from direct support. I reckon 10p in every pound of the agricultural budget, if that was put towards supply chain support, would make a massive difference. That would be £68 million a year. But what we want, is where FPMC, PMC are equal partners. There's a pro rata allocation of funding within that. And if that was the case, then that would suddenly open up £23 million a year, which is not a big amount of money. It's 3% or so of money of the total agricultural budget. It could make a massive difference. And the way I see it being done is very much in a similar way to what has happened historically with the fruit and veg aid scheme. Now that's not just 100% grant aid money that's provided to the POs, that is actually 50-50 match funded. You know, you put a pound in, I'll put a pound in. If we did it on the same basis, and that suddenly opens up sort of £46 million worth of investment. Or we want to see that spent on. So I suppose firstly, that ties in a little bit with what we've talked about, you know, just in latter sessions. We obviously want to see existing PO funding maintained. And in this room we've got the 3 POs in Scotland represented. There was a representative, first from John. You've got Eastern Scotland Growers here, which represent a huge portion of the broccoli and other increasing level of produce going into supermarkets, and the Scottish Borders produce with binding peas. So maintain that, but also look to extend it. We have confirmation through Slido that now there's potential. The Scottish Government has got the power for the funding programmes for POs, and George has confirmed that dairy POs are potentially eligible. So we'll have a chat with our George around how the potential, how that potentially could get mapped out in the future. So that'd be one thing. And then there's the other thing within an FPMC is there's accessing programme support. And this will tie in lots of stuff we've talked around already. So there is potential where there's opportunities for new cooperative ventures to set up and support. Talked through the sessions today around products, around the markets, and channels to support that. Crucial thing today is thinking about technical skills, about training, upskilling people, upskilling co-ops in terms of their ability to deliver. We've talked in the last session, we talked about market insight, market intelligence, the ability to be able to negotiate. Jed was talking earlier, about negotiation and things, to be able to fund that, brokerage, and other services. The ability to invest in agri-technology to become more efficient. And that's obviously the pool level is a much better way to get bang for buck. Innovation, technical advice, crucially around environmental action plans. Is the quickest way we want to get to improve biodiversity, quickest way to actually help meet climate change targets, just do it through the co-ops. And already, there's been very welcome funding through the KTIP programme in terms of at least to stop farmers and Highland grain around, starting that journey around climate change mitigation, but do that on a much, much bigger scale. And about the potential to de-risk doing research and development and trial work. So that's all perfectly feasible. We use an existing model, we ensure there's sufficient prioritisation in there, we get sufficient funding allocated towards it, we get moving ASAP. That's the best way of actually getting this kick-started. So basically, just to wrap up, I think I'll use 2 more famous people to kind of summarise where we're at, or where we don't want to be, where we do want to be. And I suppose all I would say is that we need to change, we can change, we want to change, but just to plagiarise another quote, famous quote, give us the tools, co-ops will finish the job. Thank you.